So for chapter 11 in business law, we talked about contracts, different types of contracts, and sort of how businesses go about them within the business world and different companies. So basically for part 1, this chapter was mainly about definitions and stuff like that. So for what a contract actually is it's basically a legally binding agreement. So this is between 2 or more parties, companies, businesses, whatever, who agree to a promise or a set of promises. This can be through many different sort of aspects within the business, whether that be through like manufacturing or distribution. But basically you're making a promise with another company, then you're basically supposed to keep that promise because it's in paper and it's in a contract. So that's the main gist about what a contract actually is. So basically what a promise is you're saying that you're going to perform a certain act, and you're basically going to do it. If you go against that or do something different, that can cause a lot of problems legally. So there's basically a promisor and a promisee, and they have an agreement between the two that something is going to get done. So that's the main gist of what a promise actually is. So for part 2, we talked about the following. So first one is elements required for a valid contract. So basically for a valid contract, you need an agreement. So you're going to basically discuss and come up with different ways that you guys can compromise to get something done. When that happens, you guys are going to agree on a set of terms, and then from there, that's your agreement that you guys are going to go by. Consideration. So for consideration is legally sufficient and bargained for. This is something that you're going to have to sort of basically, I said bargain for, but you're going to have to like discuss, and something that you guys are going to agree upon basically. So I can't think of the right words, but basically bargained is a good word. Something that compromising between you two. Contractual capacity, all parties must be competent. So for a valid contract to happen, both parties must be basically happy with what's going on. Because if one party's not happy with what's going on, then there's going to be some problems, and most likely it's not going to fall through. So both parties, or all parties, must be competent with the agreements that are being made. And then there's the legal side. Purpose for contract must be legal at the time of execution. So there's different laws and regulations that you have to go by when it comes to creating a contract, and basically all those aspects must be met when the contract is created. So next we have elements required. Unilateral or bilateral contracts. So for bilateral contract, basically for that, the offeree must only promise to perform. Basically it's a promise for a promise. So you're saying, I will do this if in return you give me this. Basically that's what it's saying. So one person's going to perform the promise and get something in return. So unilateral is the offeree can accept the offer only by completing the contract performance. So promised for an act, basically, is what that is. So that's basically the difference between bilateral and unilateral contracts. Next we have express and implied contracts. So express contracts is the terms of the agreement, oral or written, are explicitly stated. So this is big because sometimes, depending on like the level of the contract, it cannot. Sometimes it doesn't go in depth, and the other party might be confused about it. So it has to be specifically and explicitly stated to be clear. Implied contracts are conduct creates and defines the terms of the contract. So between the two, those are the difference sort of between express and implied contracts. A contract can actually be a mixture of the two. Some terms can be implied and some terms can be expressed. After that, we have valid, void, voidable contracts, and wow, I don't know how to pronounce that. Casey contracts. Okay. So basically, valid contract, contract with an agreement, consideration, contractual capacity, and has the legal side to it all worked into it. So basically what I talked about before. So for void is basically it's not legal. Terms didn't get agreed upon. It's no longer accepted within the legal aspect or the binding effect. So those are two considerations, or multiple considerations for that. Next we have voidable contracts. A valid contract that can be canceled or annulled by one of the parties. So that's something to consider too, because a party may be able to void a contract for multiple reasons. And then Casey or quasi contracts basically are fictional contracts that courts can enforce as if parties agreed. So that's something basically that the courts sort of put on the two different parties. They're imposed on the interest of fairness and justice. So basically that's everything that we looked at for chapter 11 in business law.